welcome to another edition of Drum Channel Live. If you're watching us on drumchannel.com, you can get into the chat if you want to ask us any questions. Also, we have a cool contest, and that's where we will ask you to answer the questions. I'll get to that question after the band plays here for a couple of tunes. And we have several guests, several prizes that we're going to be giving away, and several guests in the fact that we have a trio here. They have had Grammy nominations. They have, it's kind of a family affair. You should know the drummer. I mean, it is drumchannel.com, so I would think you know Bruce and the band. But it's the David Becker Tribune, and here they are to play for you. Thank you.
Drum Channel. My name is Bruce Becker. This is the David Becker Tribune. My brother David on guitar. My friend Bolle Diekmann, all the way from Viersen, Germany, if you know where that is. And we're going to continue on with another composition. This is from our latest CD called Distance Traveled, and this one is called Ted Dechter D-Flat Dummy. We'll explain later. A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3.
so much, man. David,
Thank you.
Unbelievable, unbelievable.
Thank you, Don.
Let's go sit on the
Thank
couch.
you.
I got a lot of questions for you guys. If you want to learn how he just did what he did, you have a series of lessons, live lessons, and other lessons here on Drum Channel.
Yes.
In 10 minutes, he can show you how to do everything that he just did.
That's right. 10 minutes, guaranteed. No.
We have more excitement to talk about than you guys even knew about when we get to the couch. Here is a little bit of a promo on Bruce's DVD, and we'll be right back.
One of the most challenging elements of learning drum set is the development of good, flexible technical skills. I've been teaching now for close to 30 years, and in that time I've developed some key insights in helping my students overcome technical barriers. My approach is based on the firm understanding of the balance and motion of the stick, working in harmony with our anatomy. The body has a natural way of moving, and getting inside this movement, we can blend these principles to guide us to a more fluent, effective way of playing. Another key issue is the idea of organizing your thoughts about motion. With a step-by-step process, you can affect feel, and that feel is ultimately important to move beyond the thought and get to the place of doing with a sense of fluidity. Now, a lot of people talk about the push and pull. I was just talking about double strokes, grabbing the stick from the index finger. If I do the push and pull, I always promote that you should investigate all three approaches: French grip, German grip, traditional grip. They're all united by a common theme of balance and motion. It's our quest to tap into this to unlock our emotions, feel, and ultimately our imagination. I hope you enjoy.
We will be back live, and here we are. I want to clear something up before we go any further. Before the show started, we do a little pre-roll from time to time, which gives the band a chance to kind of get warmed up and for us to know that we're streaming correctly. And that was a track we played over a bunch of pictures.
Yes.
Written by yourself.
me,
David,
yes.
yes.
That's the title track of the new CD, Distance Traveled.
And do you give yourself the right to play that song when you play?
I certainly do. I certainly do.
Wait a minute.
I've written 100 and some odd songs. I've never said no to play any of my tunes. So.
As is true of all the tracks that we're playing this evening. And actually, I saw a question that came in a little bit earlier about how you guys write and put songs together, which I'll get to in a few minutes. But I do want to mention the point, because it was a question that YouTube had: are we playing copyrighted material? And yes, we are, but we're playing it by the person who wrote the material and copyrighted it. And something we're really, really fanatical here about on Drum Channel is musicians' rights and the fact that they do get paid for what they do. And the last thing we would ever want to do is play a piece of music that we wouldn't have the rights to play. And we go overboard in order to have all the material we have on our DVDs and everything. We have a licensing agent. Everything is done so that we can help promote young musicians and give musicians the due that they should get. Because through the years, we know...
Yes, it's very much been like derated.
They haven't. Kind of Blue, Miles Davis, everybody that has been played, Joe Morello, Take Five.
Oh yeah,
we know that was an issue for some time. So anyways, we're forging.
We're back and here we are.
We're back and here we are. Yes. And how did you guys meet?
Well,
that's always a loaded. I thought that's a loaded question because
Mom and Dad. Let's see. No, we're brothers.
We always start out like that. So I thought it'd be a good place to start.
He had no choice because when I came, it was that was it. That was the last.
Who was the oldest?
I am older. I am 2 years older than
we have
David.
an older brother.
Yeah, but no, we were always musical kids. Banging on suitcases with Tinker Toy sticks, if anybody remembers what Tinker Toys are, and strumming tennis rackets like they were guitars, heavily influenced by the Beatles, of course, and the Monkees, because they were big at that time, too. We were just young guys, so we didn't know the difference. But, of course, all the Monkees are great records because the Wrecking Crew played on them. And I was actually initially a guitar player. I wanted to play guitar and started to play a little tiny Sears guitar or something like that. And I never resonated with the practice element. It was very difficult for me to sort of get the right teacher. This guy wanted to drum every year from at least when he was 2. He wanted to be the drummer boy at Christmas. So my parents would buy him a drum every year until he was 10, I think it was, right, Dave? 10 or 9?
Yeah, I got a set when I was
He got a
about 9.
Remco drum set that had real Remo heads. So it was like,
That was a big
it.
thing.
Yeah.
Real heads on
Yeah,
the
they had
Remco.
real Remo heads.
First
And I-
class.
So
and we broke the bass drum pedal in the
about
first week.
3 days.
Then I
yeah.
counted on that.
Right. Exactly. But anyway, so suffice to say, we kind of switched. I eventually went and played drums, and I always say that drums were not a conscious choice. They were sort of thrust upon me. We were 5 guys sitting in a bedroom in the summer of way back in, I think, 72. And we all said, let's start a rock band, as young kids would say. And before I could say anything, 3 guys jumped out. One guy said, I'm going to play guitar because my brother has a guitar and he'll show me how to play. And the other kid said, I've been taking piano lessons. And then the third guy said, I'm going to play guitar. So David and I were left to sort of pick the remaining instruments. And Dave said, well, I'll play the bass. And they all looked at me and said, well, you're our drummer. And within 5 minutes of me saying yes, one kid picked up the old Yellow Pages, looked in the music section, and found a drum teacher who made house calls and said, my friend wants to take drum lessons, and handed me the phone. Of course, I was kind of speechless, and I said, yeah, but I better ask my mom first. And my mom said, yeah, no problem. And then my parents made a deal with me, and they said, you can play the drums, but we want you to play on a practice pad and study and learn how to read and all that good stuff. And then after a year, if you stay with it and show us you're serious, we'll buy you a drum set. And, of course, my thought was like, easy deal. I'll make it in no time. And that was it. And so I always say, I never chose the drums chose me. And that started me on my path of studying and practicing and going to school and eventually studying with Freddie Gruber, as we all know, the great Freddie Gruber. I had a very interesting relationship with Freddie because there was many people who studied with him, but I would always say that there were some people that were as close as Freddie as you could be. I was one of those guys, as close as Don was. Don was very close with Freddie as well. They, went way back, way before I was around playing.
No, say they went way far back.
Just a little bit.
It was way back.
Yeah.
As an aspiring drummer, and still a little bit wannabe drummer, because they were here this afternoon and played a track, and he did. You're going to do that again tonight? Are you going to do that?
Yeah, we
somehow?
might
we'll
end
do
up
that.
with that.
Yeah, that would be. You got to do that.
Yeah, we'll do that.
I thought there was a whole percussion section here, and it was just somehow him sounding like a Latin percussion section on his guitar. But back in the day, whoever the musicians were that you were aspiring to, thinking of Freddie and thinking of Neil Peart and thinking of something I want to give away during the show today, we have a pair of sticks that Neil played on when he was here. I talked about these during our lesson, but we didn't get a winner. So I'm going to throw it out there. As soon as we get a winner, we'll move on to the next contest questions, because we have a few things that we could give away this evening for fun. And the question is, which drummer, maybe you can help me phrase this, which drummer played with all 4 Beatles?
Right.
Meaning they played with all 4 Beatles. Obviously,
he played on Ringo stuff, he played on John stuff, he played with Paul, and he played with George.
So the answer obviously is not Ringo, who obviously played with all 4 Beatles. So what drummer did? If you happen to know that, kind of one that might not be able to be Googled so quickly.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
So anyways, if as soon as we get the answer, Alexis, put it up on the screen, and you'll get a pair of sticks. Which
Can we give one hint?
Let's wait and see.
Okay.
Let's wait and see what we got.
Okay.
We might get a win. If we don't, we'll give some hits as we go down the road.
All right.
And the ability to have rhythm and to play drums a little bit. Were you ever an aspiring drummer?
Well, I did actually play a little bit.
I knew it.
When I took over the bass, I started as a guitar player, but then I always wanted to be a bass player, because of We Know Who. Talking about the Beatles. And I took over the bass, and whenever I came into that practice room, I started playing a little bit of drums for curiosity, let's say. But today I think it was a good lesson I took there, because the relationship between drum and bass,
I know you all agree it's important.
Absolutely. For me personally, when he got a drum set, I just had natural ability to play the drums somehow. I just never studied and worked on the stuff, but I have. I'm sort of more conceptually ahead of my limbs. But yeah, it helped me a great deal, not only for my playing but also composing, because I think like a drummer. And when I compose music, somebody asked, how I write the tunes, and I'm the primary composer, but I always think about his playing. That was the initial inception of putting a band together, with him writing original music that was kind of in this context where I can always imagine how he plays and what his fortes are. And then sometimes I challenge him on certain things, but it's pretty much set up like that because I'm thinking, how's the drum going to fit in here? What are the drums going to do? And we have a lot of the same references, obviously, but it's helped me a great deal. I mean, I've spent time with Freddie, too, and just being in his presence and being around him, learning the fundamentals of drumming have made me a much better guitar player. And I do that with my students when I teach guitar. I talk about rhythmic concepts. In fact, I just did a DVD, instructional DVD and book about rhythmic motifs for comping and soloing. More just the rhythms as opposed to the notes. So that's coming from the drum aspect.
That's perfect. Where can somebody find out about that?
You can find that online. It's available from Acoustic. Actually, it's called Fingerprints Publishing. It's part of Acoustic Music Records in Germany. But if you Google it, you'll find it. And it's all on the website, on the David Becker Tribune website. There's a page where you can link to all of our stuff, all of our CDs, all of our books, and all of our stuff that we have.
I love that concept. And that's the current...
That's the latest. That's the latest book I have. And then the latest CD is Distance Traveled, which we did a tune from. And
the ability for you to bring the rhythmic aspect into your playing, which you all do so well, and I think you hit on something, not just a matter of the drummer being drumnistic, but the drummer being, having a conversation with you two guys. That's
exactly
what Bruce does so well.
Yeah. Well, that's what it is. Bruce and I are sitting up there. We've played hundreds and hundreds of gigs around the world, and whenever we get up on the bandstand, or if it's a huge hall or a small club or whatever it is, we're having a conversation just like we would if we were having coffee. And we're trading, and it's almost like he can finish my sentences, and he knows where I'm going to go, I know where he's going to go. And it's probably, no, it isn't probably, it is. It is the most intense and most incredible relationship I have with any human being musically on the planet, is the one that Bruce.
Well, I have to say, it's very important always for musicians to listen. That is the first skill that musicians really have to tap into. I noticed through the years that I've played with a lot of different guys, and they become self-absorbed with what they're playing, and they're not really paying attention to what's going on. They're not really giving and taking. And I have a funny story about that. Part of the reason that I think that my listening element was developed was because as a kid, we have an older brother who played bass, and he joined a little bit later with us, but we were doing our rock cover tunes. And I was the go-to leader because I had the most experience, and I was a little bit more, foreboding in my personality and stuff. So then, to suffice it to say, what would happen is if one of these guys, my brother Ed or my brother David, would make a mistake, I'd be the first one to stop and read them the riot act about that. So I got very trained and tuned into listening. Was he playing the guitar solo the right way, or did he play the right chord changes on the bass part? And that was developed at a young age, and it just sort of, especially through being exposed to a lot of improvisational jazz and that kind of genres, it's really important to listen and to be able to give and take and know when to bow out and know when to step in. And still a continuing process of learning, because you learn even better of when you should step in and step out. You get more comfortable even stepping out, because playing nothing or playing space is the harder thing for drummers to do. We always want to fill up a lot of notes and show those drummers that we can play a lot of notes, but the mature guys, you had brought up a question or a story on Tuesday's lesson regarding Steve Gadd, who heard a piece from Paul Simon and said, I don't really hear drums on it. And that's a big thing to say. When David presents me stuff, it's very challenging sometimes because my drumistic head goes off and wants to play a lot of stuff, and then I have to sit down and go like, well, wait a minute. I'll listen back to maybe a rehearsal or a playback of it, and I'll go, that's a lot of nonsense. Let me bring it back to zero a little bit, So it's very challenging. But listening is really, truly the most important element, especially for drummers, to be in tune with, to know chord progressions, to listen to what the bass players are playing, and to the guitar player, if there's a vocalist, to listen to the lyrics and to know the vocal melody. So important.
Yeah, we're playing music. We're not playing just the instrument. Knowing the song form is important, and that's part of the conversation. So Bruce has that because he's able to take the musical format of whatever we're playing, and he knows the structure, and he knows what's happening. He knows the song. He's not just playing the drums. He's playing the song. And that's the thing, too, for the trio, is that we've always prided ourselves on, we can all play, but it's the sum of the parts is greater. And that's really what it's all about, is creating that bigger thing.
12 CDs, I believe it is, and 2 nominations for Grammys.
Yeah.
It had to be quite a thrill. I remember you telling me when that happened. I think you called and it was like, can't believe that we just got nominated.
Well, I think the thing is the accolades are really nice, but for me, the most important thing is to get up and play good notes. It's just, and to feel like we're challenging ourselves and still growing, because we still practice, we still work at our instruments, and we want to get better at that. And I want to be a better composer. I want to be a better player, and make the band sound. We fine-tune stuff. So that's what I focus on. I don't focus on all this. That's nice for the press stuff, but it's like, okay.
And you started in an era where things were quite different, when guys would get together and form a band, and you would be able to play in lots of clubs, because there were a lot of clubs around that you could make a decent living at as a musician.
There was a great club in town that we had a chance to do a little residence at back in the early 80s, and it was called the Comeback Inn in Venice.
I remember.
And the guy who owned that was a German guy, and he brought in a very eclectic mix of players. Joe DiOrio and Charlie Hayden used to play duos there, if you know those names. Nels Klein, who now is a guitarist with Wilco, used to have his trio.
Milcho Leviev played there?
Milcho Leviev. The Wayne Johnson trio, which was a really cool trio early on.
From Brazil, they would come play there.
And we were playing there. It's silly because I didn't see how cool it was at the time. Now I look back and I go, wow, that was really cool. At the time, you're so self-conscious about certain things, about, working on your craft and trying to be as an excellent player as you possibly can, and you forget about those things. So what I always say is, as younger guys, while you're working on your craft, don't live and die by every note. Enjoy the experience too, because we live in a duality. As we're learning our instrument, we have to be confident and comfortable with where we're at, but seeing a vision as to where we want to bring ourselves. And sometimes we get caught up in that, I want to be there, but you have to be where you're at. You have to really be comfortable in your shoes with that, and know that that's just the way it is, and you will grow, and enjoy the experience, man. Because
I think the other thing, too, is that it's important to play for the music fan who lives inside you, and not the musician. Because if I just got up there to play for guitar players or for what would be cool, I'd lose sight of what I like as a fan of music. And that resonates, I think, to a lot more people, because there are a lot of people out there that like different kinds of music and different kinds of things. So if I'm playing, I'm thinking about not what's going to be cool to play as a guitar player, but what I like to hear. And that's the person you have to satisfy, is the music fan inside you. If you do that, then you're doing your job.
That's a great soundbite and point. I mean, I've never heard anybody express it quite that way. That makes it obvious. What do you want to listen to as opposed to what do you want people to hear you play?
Exactly. And that's because you can never second guess an audience. In all the years we've made records and all the things we've done, I could never second guess what people are going to like and what they're not going to like. But what I like as a music fan, and what he likes and what we grew up with, that's going to come through when we say this is our little piece of the puzzle of music that we've contributed over the last 25, 30 years. So.
How do you see the change, looking at your long history and long success, in terms of keeping up with the way that you get your music out there?
Well, we're still here. I mean,
I'm just saying, as far as social media goes,
yeah, you're right.
And not having labels so important, and doing other things.
Here's the thing. I mean, the social media is very important, and it's become a new ball game. We're still recording for a label. We still have their help, but it's almost like we have this other wing of having Facebook and having YouTube and we don't have to do anything. I mean, we'll do concerts in Argentina at festivals, and before we even get on the bus to the hotel, it's on YouTube. And I mean, to me, that's a compliment, even though maybe the sound quality is not great, but it's showing that people have a piece in helping us to elevate our place in this musical landscape. So we have to grab all that and kind of put all the little dots together and figure out how that works. And you can do that. And I mean, that's the cool thing about young musicians. When we got signed to MCA in 1986, that was a big deal because it was a major label. Without that, we never would have reached anybody. But today, you can do things, you know, aside from having to have a record company, and it's great. But you have to do the work. You can't just say, well, I'll just sit in my room and play. There's a lot of things that you need to do. And I'm kind of excited by it. I like the process, because it allows us to see more in detail who's listening and where they're coming from. And it's kind of cool, I think.
And he's become a real tech head in the last couple of months and being way more involved in some of the details of that. I am too, but I have, you know, well, I have other things. I have a 9-month-old daughter, so I'm a first-time dad, so that's taking up a lot of my time. But I sit with him and encourage him and follow what he's doing in that context. But I have a lot of younger students who do things on their own, and they become, you know, somewhat successful and find their market or their niche or whatever you want to say it is. And it's all due to the fact that there are many more tools at our fingertips now than there were before. You know, you had to rely on that big behemoth record company, and if somebody inside the label didn't like you, you may not get the attention that you were warranted. And we battled that a little bit. We had, you know, our ups and downs, but like Dave said, we're still here. And we've always had good success with Peter Finger. That's great.
I mean, if you just listen, you know why they're still here. There's no question about it. Well, there's even more of a need for what you guys are doing. I mean, you're preaching to the choir when I hear you guys play, of course. We have a winner. Juan Pablo.
Woo!
Guessed
I won.
the answer,
Right.
and the answer is
Jim Keltner.
Yes, right. Longtime friend, great drummer, who had the experience throughout his life of playing with all 4 Beatles. Good answer, good answer. I'm going to do one more, and we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and get into some questions, and then you guys can get back and play. But what I'm going to do is hit a question which is from a game that's going to be coming out in the next few months by the summer. It's a Drum Channel trivia game. Okay. What the world needs, right?
There you go.
Of course.
Why not? Yeah. And it's an educational game, too, and a kind of a fun one. Adam has picked some questions. Which one of these do you like the best, Adam? I know, but the first one or the...
First one's pretty good.
Okay, this is, I mean, you're going to have to maybe look this one up. We might get this, because this is going back a little bit. There he is, somewhere over here, Elvin Jones. And the question is about Elvin Jones, who revolutionized and evolutionized the way a lot of drummers approach the drum set. When it comes to rhythm, he took rhythm to another whole place. What's the title of Miles Davis's 1955 album that features Elvin Jones on drums and Charles Mingus on double bass? Okay. The next one who answers that, I'll do another pair. We've got many pairs of sticks that Neil. I think there's probably a lot of Neil Peart fans out there. So we'll do another pair of sticks that he actually played on and used here. Let's see if somebody can come up with the answer to that question. In the meantime, send us in your questions. If you're watching us on drumchannel.com, you can get into our chat, or at drumchannel on Twitter. If you have some questions for the guys or questions in general, we'll have a few minutes to get to them when we get back. Here is a little bit of another show we have on Drum Channel by Mr. Chad Smith, which gets a little wild and wacky, as Chad Smith always does. We'll be back in just a second.
Welcome to the Chad Smith Show. It's a show where Chad Smith does whatever he wants with whoever he wants. Hopefully, he won't make your mother upset, and he'll talk about drums with nice language. But then again, you just never know what will come out of his mouth. Consider yourself warned. Enjoy.
We're going to go over to the therapy room now. I'm going to go get a shrink session now. I got a little tendonitis from all this traveling and touring and playing, so I have a physiotherapist to come to the show.
All right, come over this way, though, Chad. You can be, like, kind of offset here with your legs that way. And I need your shoulder actually off the table just a bit. All right? All right.
Very demanding.
Yeah, I know. These are nerve stretches, okay? This is going to stretch your radial nerve here, all right, Chad? You can just relax here. You tell me when you get a good stretch at first, though, okay? I'm going to drop you down there. Let me know if it hurts your shoulder at all, all right? Tell me when you first start to want to stretch it up. First doing this right here.
The more I see, the less I know, the more I like to let it go. Hey.
We're back. Here's the CD that we spoke of, which is available again on the same website.
It's available all over. You can find it on all the websites. There's links from our website. You can get it from Amazon. You can get it on iTunes. That's the good thing. Once the record comes out from the record company in Germany, it's pretty much worldwide. It's available. So it is out there. And it's been actually getting a lot of radio play in the States. We were number 18 on the jazz charts.
And we might also mention there happens to be a DVD available by Mr. Teacher. You can tell when he talks. The Teacher and Bruce comes out. Is it like that all the time around the dinner table, too?
No. I don't know. Ask my wife.
Yeah, ask his daughter in a few years.
But you're so passionate about it, though, which is what makes it so exciting when you come on the Drum Channel and do these lessons for us.
Yeah, it was imparted to me. I mean, Freddie was a crazy guy, and it was hard to sometimes, there was not a consistent Freddie because sometimes he could be down lower than the carpet in his personality, and he never hid his feelings. Or you could get him really animated, and he could give you like some stuff that you'd never get from anybody else in such a way that you had food for thought for years, basically. So, but, I studied with him for a long time, and my passion for teaching was immediately kind of ignited back in the early 80s, and I started teaching. One of my early students was Glenn Sobel, if you know Glenn, from Alice Cooper. Yeah.
And I know you've got some great drummers who teach with you now. You're at the level where when Bruce speaks, people listen. We have a question here from Roger in Portland, Maine, going to Portland, Oregon next week. We kind of answered this. Do you guys write together? I know you said you write most of the songs, but I'd like to extend that to once the song is written, is it a matter of what kind of a beat would you like?
Yeah.
Or do you kind of...
It depends. On this record, it was this record was written very fast. We had done a very big project called Batavia, which has a whole story into itself, and you can read about that on the internet. But a lot of compositions that were very elaborate with a lot of orchestration sometimes. This record I wrote very quickly, with the exception of Ted Dector. We'd never played anything. He flew in from Germany. I had the sketches of the tunes, and we rehearsed. So we'll talk about arrangement. Bruce is good at thinking, well, maybe we should try this 3 times here and do this. And I have specific things in mind, but, if he comes up with something better, Well,
we had one tune where David had another idea about it. We spent... I don't know, maybe an hour trying to get it together, and Bolle and I, we couldn't get into David's head as to what he wanted rhythm section wise. So we kind of stopped. We took a break, and I had been bugging Dave, and I said, "Hey man, I got an idea for a groove, that I've been playing and practicing, and it's kind of like this. And I think, what if we change the tempo of that and do it this way?"
Well, actually, you didn't say that. He actually just said, I've got this thing.
That's
and then
right.
I said to him, I said, why don't you play that thing you've been telling me to play? He looked at me like this, and then suddenly he was like, Bulla got it. And suddenly it just clicked, and it was like, oh, I get it.
Right, and it became a really cool tune. So it was kind of just one of those things that fell together. But a lot of times I get a chance to listen back to his ideas, and I'm a good organized thinker. So I'm good at editing or maybe trimming some fat on what David does. But I have to say, he's my brother, so this may sound that I'm slighted to his advantage, but if you go check out the bulk of tunes that David's written over the last 25 years, I think he's written some really great compositions, and, that really allows me to have a real musical approach to what I do. And again, it's sometimes challenging, because if he gives me no direction, the drummer guy goes off in my head and wants to play a million things. And I have to sometimes pull that guy back, because you think, oh, I could do this and that would impress all those drummers. Nah. You got to play the music. So
I think, if anything, his drumming impresses the drummers because it's so musical. The musicality that comes through Bruce, that's the thing.
This is a great band question, too, from Gary in Dallas, Texas. Playing in a band for the first time. I'm just assuming maybe he's a young drummer, but there's a lot of people on Drum Channel who are getting into playing for the first time, and they're quite older. Should I use a metronome to try and keep the time steady, or without one?
No, use a metronome, definitely.
Yeah. Support your time. The reinforcement of a timepiece. In fact, to play to a metronome is very challenging at first, especially when you're playing in a band setting.
I assume he's a young drummer first time.
Yeah. I would suggest work with the metronome, and divvy up your time, where if you were rehearsing with the band, do it half and half. Work half of the rehearsal with the metronome, and then try to turn it off and see how your time feels. Of course, always you have so many tools at your disposal, so it's easy to record yourself and to listen back and monitor. And those little mnemonic devices, those little memory devices of like, oh yeah, I rush when I go to the bridge, those will stick. Those will be little traffic signals in your head, and it'll help you formulate a better sense of time. But working with a metronome, of course, is one of the foremost in what we all must do. I mean, you know, playing to a click track was something that when I first started to play to tracks, when we did some tracks, we would have some pre-recorded tracks that I had to play to. It was difficult to be free in your playing and still sit with the metronome. And so that required that I really had to work real hard and get comfortable to have a feel, to make it not sound like you were playing to a click, but make it sound like you had a good feel. And that just becomes a little post and a helpful aid to keep the time in order. So.
Make it your friend. I've heard a lot of drummers say here.
Exactly.
Don't. And if you, before you throw it out the window, if you hear it, because that means that you're getting a little bit off, probably ahead as opposed to behind, just kind of think of it like you're driving the car. Don't slow down immediately. Just kind of slow, you know, edge it back down and see if you can kind of find the place. But it's a great tool at the end of a rehearsal when the subject comes up. Did we rush? You know,
then you'll know.
Because you'll often hear it seemed like it went faster at the end. It's like, well, no, it absolutely didn't go faster at the end. Chad Wackerman, a great master class that I have yet to edit here on Drum Channel. We shot it about a year ago. But it's teaching middle schoolers or high schoolers how to read charts, because they know how to read legitimately, but how do you take and interpret a chart? So we actually went to his father's middle school, because of course his dad is the patriarch of the Wackerman family, all four of them great musicians. And they played a song, and Chad played it, and his dad had the metronome up in front and, you know, counted it off. And of course Chad Wackerman kept it the same all the way through. But at the end, I was on the camera up in front, and two of the girl saxophone players walked up and said, Mr. Wackerman, we couldn't play that at the end. It sped up. And he said, no, it stayed the same tempo, because they were so used to it slowing down.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Quite the opposite. Do we have, I know we have more questions in there. Hello, Alexis. This is Gary from Dallas, Texas. Yeah. He already played for the first time in a band.
Yeah, we had that one.
That's the metronome.
That's the metronome one, right. In terms of when you guys track anything, though, do you play with a metronome at all?
Not anymore. No.
Sometimes,
what we do is we'll use a reference point for tempo, and we'll play. And we will. Oh, we did. That's true.
It depends on the project. This record was recorded in 2 days, and it's a very
2
live.
days?
Yes, it's a very live record.
Yeah.
But some records take a lot longer, and it just depends. It depends on what we were trying to address. So we've done both, and we do both. But there's a question here: do you record your songs all playing at the same? Well, on this record we did. This was all done live. No overdub. There's like maybe one or two small overdubs, but everything was live.
Nice.
And actually, there are records that we've done that have been more composed that we have done live tracks. We did one with Russell Ferrante where it was just Bruce and I and Russell, and the whole track
we didn't have the
live.
bass player, and what we needed to do is just record that because we could get Russell only on that particular day, and we tracked out without a bass player. That was challenging because Russell's a drummer too, and he's very rhythmic in his playing, and so it felt good, and we were able to really, you know, keep it all together, and then he was able to insert his bass tracks after the fact.
But this record's all live.
All live.
All live.
Yeah.
So it depends, again, it depends on the project. We've done so many projects over the years where it's live or sometimes it's you know,
I've pushed Dave into trying to be a little bit more live because while I love playing to a metronome for lots of things, I feel that in the improvisational mode, it's nice to have a little bit of freedom of movement with your time a little bit. Even though the crutch, you can play with the metronome. But
you guys don't mind. This is something you should be aware of. Subjects come up a lot on Drum Channel, too. If it does move a little bit, there's nothing wrong with that.
Listen to Since I've Been Loving You by Led Zeppelin and listen to how back John Bonham pulls it back on the very beginning of the first notes when Jimmy kicks in that guitar riff. And it's beautiful. I know if I did it when I was younger, I would get self-conscious about it, but it's not a big deal. It's human. We want to be human. We're not machines. So we will have to bring that human element to everything that we do as musicians. We're trying to communicate the human emotion. So don't forget that. And don't lose sight of
to
that.
answer Nick's last part of his question, Nick from San Francisco, he said, how do you feel about that? Now, I just want to say this. There have been, and I actually addressed that. It's fine to layer stuff. It's fine to do things live. It just depends on what you're trying to get. It's the end result is what you want to see. So however you have to get there, that's what it's all about.
Another word from wisdom here. You said you come up with some pearls here today. I love it. A lot of experience. We're going to go over and have you guys play a little bit more because I think that's what everybody would certainly like to see. We'll do one last question from Victor in San Antonio, Texas. To Bruce, I guess. Thank you for your lessons on Drum Channel. You've talked about rock and jazz. Do you think of playing the beat more ahead with jazz? Oh, this was a cool question.
That's a good question.
And laid back with rock. You just talked about John Bonham pulling back. Certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, that was speeding up, or having the whole train speed up a little bit. That's a little bit different than this question. I think he's talking more about time feel.
Sure, about the time feel. I always suggest to my students, that it's very important to have some depth of understanding of the jazz genre if you're not a jazzer. And if you're a jazzer and you don't really experience the rock mode, I think you should investigate the rock mode of playing. I feel that they are embraced. I don't see them as being too much different in concept. I don't really think about pushing the time in a context of jazz or rock. My natural feel, because my first two influences in rock and roll, really big influences, were John Bonham and Simon Kirke. And Simon Kirke was a drummer from Bad Company. And they both had sort of a laid-back feel. So I naturally just gravitated towards playing like that. And in jazz, I like to, I like it kind of in the middle. I don't like it standing on the back. And I've seen guys talk about, well, you lay it back, you push it forward. I never really thought like that. I just wanted it to feel good. So when I listened back to it, was it feeling good or was it not feeling good? And that's, what was imparted from Freddie as well. He said, on the back side, on the front side, does it feel good? And that, that was it. If you're not tapping your toes or snapping your fingers, something's wrong.
He does a very good Freddie Gruber, by the way.
Bruce, when you studied with Freddie, was it mostly technique or playing? I've heard he taught both. For me, it was first and foremost technique, but I studied with him for almost 8 years. So at some point, we always indulged in technical things. However, he had a lot of interesting conceptual things from me. I know that some of them were passed on to other students a little bit, but I know that there were specific things that he did just for me. Because the one great thing about Freddie, and the thing that I learned as a teacher, is that you really have to tap into the individual. You can't be a one-size-fits-all. There's, really learning to communicate and trying to figure out how that person digests information. And so for me, with Freddie, he gave me so many things to think about conceptually outside of technique. And Don can corroborate the technical side. We did so much details in those 70s because later on when he moved out of that little house that he lived in, he didn't have the patience and the details that he had once had before. When I got him, he was a really well-oiled Freddie Gruber who had a groove down. And I showed up, and we took care of business. And he was much more, I want to say organized, but that's not being fair because Freddie was not really organized. But for the Freddie that I knew, that was the most organized I'd ever seen him in the late 70s, 78, 79, when he lived on Etiwanda. He had a pretty good groove until he sold that house. And then it started to, change. And by the time he hit Zelza, oh, my God. So
we have a winner. Tom, Scott, that stumped us too. Blue Moods was actually the answer.
Yes,
right.
While you go over there and get set up to play, we're going to play a short clip. Have you seen the Anildo Rucia show that he did here on Drum Channel?
No, you keep mentioning names. I always catch up. After you tell me the names, I look at it.
You've got to check this guy out. This is something that you won't believe. This is just a short little clip, a couple of minutes that I did as an excerpt from the show that he has here on Drum Channel. It's called The Third Hand. He gets like two Kostka and Clave going at the same time, playing other things with the left hand. This is one of those, you can't believe this guy's doing it.
Yeah.
So enjoy it, and we're going to be back in just a couple of minutes with the David Becker Tribune. Thank you so much. We'll be right back.
the first authentically Cuban music, authentically, is from piano, not from percussion. Okay? Manuel Saumel is the first guy who included different rhythm in Cuban music for piano.
For piano.
Not for percussion.
Wow.
The father of the nationalism in Cuba is a pianist, no percussionist.
Wow.
Okay.
Amazing.
When the cinquillo was playing at the first time,
Right.
was in music for piano, not for percussion.
The quintuplets.
Cuban music, authentically, no? The cinquillo is from, maybe from Africa, but original Cuban music is for piano, the first step.
You're talking about the cinquillo, the rhythm.
King, 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 king.
Thank you. That was a piece called Hey Mister. That's from this Distance Traveled CD. We're going to continue on with an old tune that we wrote back in 2003. This one's called Curds and Waves.
much, man. What a pleasure.
Thanks,
what a
Doc.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to have you here all day, we've got more tracks from the ones that we had right now that we're going to be putting up also. Check out our download store, which is where you might be able to purchase all the tracks. And, of course, you'll see the show here on drumchannel.com. And, again, where can they find all of this information about the band?
www.davidbeckertribune.com, and that'll link you to everything, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all the good stuff.
And Bruce Becker's website.
And Bruce Becker, too.
Yes.
My website, brucebecker.com, and I'm a fixture here. I've been doing some drum channel lessons, too, so, look for me regularly on the drum channel. But the DVD is available, download on the store of Drum Channel, and a hard copy available from me.
You have a microphone on you. Why am I holding this up next to you?
I don't know. Cool. It looks better.
It looks good. Not very professional here, though, don't I? Also, don't remember to not forget that we have lessons every Tuesday, and we have live shows on Thursday next week. It's going to be Greg Bissonette will be here,
great one.
and Copus is going to be with him, and he's going to be doing a lot of things from his new album, which is doing really, really well on iTunes also. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you Tuesday or Thursday next week. Don't forget. Hey, thanks for coming by today. This is Drum Channel, where it all happens. We're in beautiful Oxnard. The fields are behind us. Come on in and let's check out and see what's going on in the big room and in the studio.
Okay, so now we're in the big room. This is where all the magic happens for me. So many wonderful musical events have been channeled and going out into the universe from here. We have this big giant room. We have at least 7 cameras with lockoffs for the feet and for the overheads. We have a big jib that can float around the room and get these overhead shots, and it's just a beautiful place to be. We shoot all of our stuff here. We have our lessons, our master classes, band performances, our drum jams. We have the Art of Drumming shows where I get to jam with some of the best drummers in the world and best percussionists in the world and interview them. We have our feedback section and our live lessons, and we have things like when I do a session, you can watch me and how I approach a session for a client that wants me to play drums on their record. So this is really where it's at. And if any of you are interested in cutting a DVD or doing some recording here, we rent the DC studios out. So we have great prices. So I hope you'll come out here if you're in the Los Angeles area or anywhere in the world and take advantage of that.
So Terry showed you guys the big room, the recording room. This is the control room. This is where everything gets mixed and mastered and controlled from by Chris. He does all the engineering, all the miking, all the mixing for all the content that we produce. So everything from live shows to lessons, secrets from the pros, everything that is recorded in the big room is mixed by this dude on this rad gear. So yeah, we have some awesome equipment, stuff that you can totally geek out on, and everything audio is mixed in this section. This is the video control room. As you can see, it's also very well equipped. This is usually where we do, well, this is always where we do the line cut from. We do the live edits for the broadcast as well. So all the video feeds from the main room come to this central spot, and this is where we do the line cut for the live shows. That rad little stack at the end there is actually what we use to broadcast this with, and that's what we use to do multicam broadcasts. So if you're watching a live show that we're streaming live, you can actually still choose between different angles. So that is what that allows us to do. So this is the video control section. It's pretty rad. And next up, I'm going to show you guys the DC offices. That was the main room and the control room, and this is the DC offices, pretty much. That's the kitchen. That's where we make coffee that keeps us alive, especially if musicians come in at 9 o'clock in the morning. They need really strong coffee. This is Don's office. This is usually where the artists come in to kind of plan the shows and run through the shows and get everything down. That's Papillon. That's her office. She's Don's assistant. Then we have Sarah. She does a bajillion things, so I don't want to single one thing out. Then we have Jonathan. He's the dude behind the camera right now. He does some editing and video work. Jose also does editing and video work. So that's the DC offices.
Okay, I brought you in the front door, and now we're back in the studio with our artist in residence, my best friend, Terry Bozio.
Thank you.
And our intern, Terry Quibus, who's working on lessons, just like you should be working on lessons, getting the shuffle down, right?
Yes.
And you're working on all of your lessons, classes, everything that we have coming up that's new, and there's new stuff here every day. And it's your drum channel, so let us know what you want. Thanks for joining us.